I'm Olivia Miller, and for years I lived in the shadow of my family's expectations. It wasn't until I finally decided to step into the light of my own truth that everything changed. Growing up in the Miller family meant being a part of something that looked perfect on the outside, but inside, it was a completely different story. My father was a successful businessman who built his empire from the ground up, and my mother, a socialite, was always dressed in designer clothes and hosted events that everyone envied. My brother Mason was everything my parents wanted him to be: handsome, charming, and destined to take over the family business. But me? I was always just the other one, the one who didn't quite fit in. I was never like Mason. I didn't care about business meetings or social events. I wasn't interested in competing to see who had the best car, the biggest house, or the most prestigious connections. What I wanted was something different. I wanted to create art. I wanted to build a life that was mine, not one designed by my family's unspoken rules and high expectations. And for years, I kept that desire hidden, locked away in a part of me that didn't feel worthy of coming to light. I worked hard to fit the mold, to be the perfect daughter who didn't rock the boat. But inside, I felt like a stranger in my own skin, suffocated by the pressure to live up to a life that wasn't mine. Then one day, it all came crashing down. It was my 32nd birthday, and our family had gathered for a celebratory dinner at one of the most luxurious restaurants in town. Everyone was dressed to impress. Mason had just been given a new sports car for his birthday, and my parents couldn't stop talking about his latest achievements in the family business. I sat there quietly, looking at the glimmering glasses and silverware, feeling like I didn't belong in that world at all. I was wearing a simple blazer, modest jewelry, and no one even noticed. The whispers began, loud enough for me to hear. "Look at Olivia," I overheard my aunt say. "She's still playing around with that art nonsense. You'd think she'd have something more impressive to show for herself by now." Before I could even process the hurt, my mother turned to me with a forced smile. "Olivia, when are you going to grow up and take things seriously? Look at Mason. He's working hard to secure his future." Her words stung in a way I didn't expect. I'd heard it all before, but this time, something inside of me snapped. I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. I wasn't going to hide my truth. I knew what I had to do. This time, I was going to stop trying to live by their rules. I was going to finally show them who I truly was. Before we get started, where are you tuning in from? Are you in the middle of the morning rush or on a late-night drive? Drop a comment below. You're about to hear everything that happened after I made the choice that changed everything. It was the moment I'd been waiting for, but I didn't know it at the time. That night, after the family dinner, I found myself sitting alone on the balcony, staring at the city lights in the distance. My thoughts were all over the place, a whirlwind of anger, regret, and confusion. I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep up with the lie that I was fine living a life I didn't choose, that I was fine being the perfect daughter in the eyes of my family, all while slowly dying inside. No one ever understood me. My parents were too caught up in their image, and my brother was too busy chasing after success. They'd never understand what it was like to wake up every day, feeling like you don't belong in your own life. But I couldn't keep hiding anymore. I had spent years pushing down my passions, burying my art, my dreams, and my true self just to fit in. I had allowed their expectations to mold me into someone I didn't even recognize. The worst part? I had started to believe that their way was the only way, that my life would always be limited to their idea of success, as if my own goals didn't matter. It was exhausting, and I was done. It was time to change the narrative. I had to show them who I really was, who I'd been all along. So I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. My heart was racing as I opened a message I had been drafting in my mind for years, but never had the courage to send. I was going to tell my family the truth. No more pretending, no more hiding. I told them about the art gallery I'd been working with in secret for the past 2 years, the exhibitions I had curated, the commissions I had taken on, the works I had created that were finally gaining attention in the art world. I told them how I had been using my savings to fund my own creative projects, investing in my future, and learning everything I could about the art industry. I was ready to stand up to them and show them that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I was ready to let them know that I had been building something of my own, something that meant more to me than anything they could ever buy. It wasn't about the luxury cars, the mansions, or the prestige. It was about something deeper. It was about purpose. I wasn't interested in the family business or being a status symbol for their social circles. I had a vision for my life, and it wasn't tied to their expectations. The message I wrote was calm, direct, and to the point. I wasn't asking for their approval anymore. I wasn't trying to impress them. I was telling them my truth. I wanted them to understand that I had spent years hiding behind their expectations, trying to meet their standards, and I had reached the point where I couldn't keep pretending. I wasn't going to apologize for my choices. If they couldn't see that, then that was their problem, not mine. After I hit send, I sat there for a while, waiting for their response. My heart was in my throat, but a part of me felt liberated. For the first time in years, I was letting go of their control over my life. I wasn't asking for permission. I wasn't waiting for them to validate me. I was stepping into my own power, taking responsibility for the choices I had made, and claiming my future. The responses started coming in the next morning. The first was from my mother. She said I had always been a disappointment to them. She told me that my decision to pursue art was foolish, and that I was throwing away a life of opportunity. Her words didn't sting like they used to, though. They were just empty, hollow attempts to bring me back under her control. Then came my father, who told me that I was wasting my time, and that I would never make a living doing what I loved. And then there was Mason, my brother, who was the one I least expected. He actually apologized. He told me he had never understood the pressure I was under, and that he was proud of what I was building, even if it was different from what they had envisioned for me. I didn't expect that response from him, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. It was as if he had finally seen me for who I truly was. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was enough to remind me that not everyone in my family was lost to the idea of wealth and status. Some of them, like me, wanted something more. But not everyone was supportive. As expected, the rest of the family couldn't care less. They continued to mock my choices, dismissing my accomplishments as insignificant. They couldn't see past their own narrow definition of success. But that didn't matter anymore. I wasn't going to let their judgment define me. I knew what I had to do. The next step was clear. I had to build my own future, away from their expectations. I couldn't change their minds, but I could control my own destiny. And that's exactly what I did. I woke up the next morning feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration. It was as if the weight of 1,000 expectations had been lifted off my shoulders. The night before, I had done something I never thought I could do. Step away from the suffocating grip of my family's opinion. For the first time, I was embracing the real me. But even as I felt a small sense of freedom, the consequences of my actions loomed over me. My family's reaction was inevitable, but it didn't make it any easier to face. I knew the road ahead would be hard, but I had to keep going. The first few days after sending the message were filled with silence. My phone was almost eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the usual flood of messages I was used to receiving from my family. I kept telling myself that this was a good thing. The quiet meant I had taken a step towards something new. But that didn't stop the doubt from creeping in. What if I had made a huge mistake? What if my family was right? What if I had ruined my chance at ever truly belonging with them? I tried to push those thoughts away as best I could. I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going back. This was the path I had chosen, and I would see it through. But that didn't mean the uncertainty didn't nag at me, especially when I had nothing to distract myself with except my own thoughts. Mason, my brother, was the first to reach out. He sent me a message that was different from the others. It wasn't filled with anger or disappointment like the others had been. Instead, it was a question. He asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. It was a small thing, but to me, it meant a lot. It meant he was at least willing to listen, even if he didn't fully understand. I agreed to meet him at a small cafe I liked in town. It was a neutral ground, away from the drama of family politics, a place where we could talk without the pressure of the mansion looming over us. I arrived early, trying to calm my nerves. I wasn't sure what to expect from him. Mason and I hadn't exactly been close over the years, but there was always an unspoken bond between us. He was the only one who had ever truly understood what it was like to feel like an outsider in the family. When he arrived, he was different. Gone was the smug confidence he usually wore, replaced by something I couldn't quite place. He looked more like the person I remembered growing up, the one who would sit with me after dinner and talk about our dreams, before the weight of the family's expectations had crushed them. He greeted me with a soft smile and gestured to an empty table by the window. We sat down, and there was an awkward silence at first. Neither of us knew exactly where to begin. Finally, Mason spoke. "Look, I know this isn't how you expected things to go," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "But I want you to know, I didn't agree with everything they said. Not all of it." I looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I know they don't understand what you're doing," he continued, running a hand through his hair. "But I do. I see what you're building, Eliza. It's not the same as what they expect. But I admire it, and I'm sorry for not saying that sooner." I was taken aback. My brother, the one who had always been the family golden child, was admitting that he understood me? I hadn't expected that. It wasn't a grand apology, but it was enough. It was more than I had ever received from anyone in the family. I felt a lump form in my throat as I realized how much I had longed for that kind of acknowledgement. "I didn't expect that from you," I admitted, shaking my head. "But I appreciate it. It means a lot." Mason smiled and took a deep breath, as if he was finally ready to speak his truth. "You know," he said, "I've spent so much of my life trying to be the perfect son, the one who followed their rules, who made the right choices. But I've always felt like I was living in their shadow, like I could never be good enough, no matter what I did." He paused, his eyes meeting mine. "I guess I'm starting to realize that maybe I don't have to be what they want me to be either. Maybe it's time for all of us to stop pretending." His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I had felt like the black sheep of the family, the one who didn't fit in. But here was Mason, telling me that he felt the same way, that he too was struggling with the pressure to be something he wasn't. It was a humbling moment, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel so alone. "I didn't know you felt like that," I said softly, my voice trembling a little. "I always thought it was just me." Mason gave me a small, understanding smile. "I think we've all been carrying the weight of their expectations for so long. We didn't realize we were all just trying to survive. Maybe it's time we start living for ourselves." We talked for hours that day, sharing our thoughts and frustrations, our dreams and fears. It wasn't a perfect conversation, and it didn't fix everything. But it was a start, and that's all I needed. After that day, things began to shift. Slowly but surely, I began to build my own space within the family. I wasn't trying to impress them anymore or live up to their standards. I was living for me. And as I did, I realized that maybe, just maybe, they would come to respect me for it. Whether they fully understood my choices or not, the important thing was that I understood them. Apologies for the confusion. Here is the development of point 4 in English. Months had passed since I decided not to let them make me fail again. However, every time my family gathered, I felt like I was back at square one. Despite clear progress in my career and personal life, The underlying hostility and condescending glances from them felt like a persistent scar in my mind. Every time they mocked me for living a too simple life or kept talking about achievements I hadn't reached yet, I felt lonelier than ever. One evening when I received a call from my younger brother Adam, I had no idea that my life was about to change. Adam was the only one in the family who truly understood me, even though we didn't have much in common. He worked for a big company and had achieved some success, but even he had to face pressure from the family. This time, Adam called to tell me that the family was holding a big meeting, and the important part was that I had to attend. "Sis, this time they won't be as easy as before. They've planned everything. You need to be there," he said on the phone. I knew this was my chance to change how they saw me. I had decided that I wouldn't just sit quietly and let them continue to belittle me. This time, I would show them that I wasn't the person they thought I was. On the day of the meeting, I chose to wear a simple yet elegant outfit that reflected my confidence and independence. As I walked into the room, I could sense their eyes on me. While their mockery was still there, I felt calm because I had a plan to deal with what was about to unfold. The meeting began as usual, with updates on finances and the family's ever-increasing material goals. A few people in the family continued to boast about their achievements, but I couldn't let them continue to look down on me. In one moment, I stood up, and all eyes turned toward me. "We can keep doing this forever, can we? But will there ever be a time when we truly look at each other and understand the value of what we have?" I asked. The room went silent. They hadn't expected this. My words didn't just stun them, they made me realize something. I wasn't just going to sit here any longer. The years of condescension were over. I continued, "I've been working hard, and I don't need to prove anything to anyone. But when are we going to understand that real success is not about showing off, but about having something meaningful?" That was when everything changed. I noticed one family member, someone I least expected, speak up. "Maybe you're right," they said. "We need to rethink how we view each other." It was an opportunity to finally let them see that I wasn't just a shadow in their eyes. I had come here with a plan, but now the stakes were higher than I had imagined. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house was different. There was a strange tension in the air that I hadn't felt before. I had spoken out at the meeting, and for the first time, my voice had been heard. Not just as an outsider or someone they could dismiss, but as someone worthy of respect. The change in the dynamic was subtle, but it was there. Still, I knew I couldn't allow them to believe that one conversation was enough to transform their mindset. After the meeting, I took a walk outside to clear my head, walking through the lush garden that had been my sanctuary as a child. It felt like the right moment to reflect on everything that had happened. As the wind rustled the leaves of the trees, I thought about how much I had changed. What once felt like a burden, living in the shadow of my family's wealth and status, was now something I could see from a place of empowerment. For the first time in my life, I realized that their approval didn't matter. I wasn't sure what to expect when I walked back into the house. Adam had promised to be there, but he was the only one who understood me. The rest of the family was unpredictable, and I could only imagine how they'd react to the new side of me that had emerged. As I stepped back into the house, the first person I saw was my mother, who had been quieter than usual since the meeting. She had always been the most controlling, the one who set the bar for what was expected from me. But today, there was something different about her. "Eliza," she called softly, her tone uncharacteristically gentle. "Can we talk?" I paused for a moment, unsure of what to say. "Sure, Mom," I replied, my voice steady despite the nerves building in me. We sat together in the living room, and she looked at me with a somber expression. I had never seen her this way, and I couldn't help but wonder if my words the night before had affected her more than I realized. "I know I've said things before," she began, "things that hurt you. I always wanted the best for you, but I didn't know how to show it. Her words weren't a full apology, but they were a start, a real, unguarded attempt to bridge the gap between us. It was then that I realized that my standing up to the family had shifted something in them. Maybe it wasn't just my family's perception of me that needed to change, but my perception of them as well. I had spent so long thinking that they would never understand my values, that I had been foolish to hope for their validation. But now, as my mother sat across from me, her walls down for the first time in years, I understood that perhaps there was room for growth and reconciliation, even if it meant it had to happen slowly, over time. As we spoke, I realized that my journey wasn't just about showing my family that I was capable, that I could achieve great things without their financial help. It was about finding the courage to stand for what I believed in, to fight for the legacy my grandmother had passed down to me, and to redefine success on my own terms. The mansion wasn't the only thing at stake. It was my own place in the family, my own role in the story that they had been writing for me for so long. By the time the conversation ended, it wasn't filled with resolutions or promises, but it was enough for me to know that the seed had been planted. I wasn't alone in my journey anymore. For the first time, I felt like I was on the same side as them, because I wasn't just trying to prove my worth anymore. I was simply being myself. Later that day, when the final family meeting came around, the entire family felt different. There were no more pointed comments or dismissive remarks. No one mocked my modest lifestyle, and no one sneered at my financial choices. The conversation was more civil, less competitive, and surprisingly, more collaborative. I didn't have to win anyone's approval or fight for a seat at the table. I realized that I had already found my place, not by showing my worth in their eyes, but by embracing my own sense of self-worth. The mansion, the legacy, the business, it was all part of a much bigger picture now. I no longer needed their validation. I had learned that true success wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about understanding and respecting the values that mattered to me, regardless of what others thought. As I prepared to leave the family meeting for the last time, I felt a sense of peace. The journey wasn't about turning the tide of family opinion in one day. It was about growth, patience, and knowing that the only approval that truly mattered was my own. So, what about you? Have you ever been underestimated by your family or forced to fight for recognition? How did you stand up for yourself, and what did it teach you about your own strength? I'd love to hear your stories. Drop a comment below, and if you enjoy real-life family drama like this, be sure to subscribe for more.